Hello and welcome. My name is Ian Weiner. I am your host on today's show, Generations Wealth Talk, the show where we teach you how to grow, preserve, and protect your wealth for generations. Now today we've got a special show. This is a little bit different than normal. I'm your host, Ian Weiner, Certified Financial Planner, and typically I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Todd Watley. Now I want you to know Todd is fine. He is still on vacation. Well, not really. He is in Washington, D.C. He is grading the Certified Elder Law Attorney exam as the past president of the National Elder Law Foundation. This is one of his duties. We're told he's doing it by the pool and really struggling here. But today we have a really special show for you. When Todd is away, I get to talk a little bit more about retirement planning, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk through what I am calling the retirement blueprint. Now, whether you're getting ready to retire, you've already retired, or you hope to retire someday, really what this is I'm going to be walking you through. These are the 4 key areas that if you want to have a great retirement, that you want to get these things right. Now, I recognize that I don't look like I'm in retirement, and I'm not yet. I love what I do, and I'll probably do this forever. But I have helped hundreds of folks get to and through retirement, and so I'm going to share all of the insights, all of the, I don't know if they're secrets, but all of the things that I've learned over years of walking folks through that. And the thing that I think is somewhat interesting about retirement is that unless you're in my shoes and helping folks walk through it, it's typically your first time doing it. It's a little bit like kindergarten, if I can say it that way. Your first time doing it is your first time, and so there's things that you may not know. I'm going to help you to work through some of those myths. We're going to work through some of the biggest concerns about retirement, and I'm going to give you some strategies and some things to think about along the way. Now, I do have a few slides for us today. You can look at those if you want. You don't have to. It's just a little bit of a guide for us as a way to begin to walk through our conversation today. And so hang with me. I'm going to share a lot of, I think, really good insight today. You will probably know more about retirement than most financial advisors do at the end of this. So whether you're working with a financial advisor, you don't have one, you have 3 of them, I think you're going to learn something. I may be able to save you a little bit of money along the way as well. And so we're going to go through, these are the 4 components of a great retirement plan. Now, the first thing that we need to do when we're building a retirement plan is we have to create a spending plan. Now, this is something that in a lot of cases is a little bit uncomfortable to talk about, okay? I have intentionally gone away from using the B word, the budget word, with my clients because it has a little bit of a negative connotation. Now, is it okay if I'm really candid and transparent with you? I'm going to do it anyway. I just want to get your permission. I'll feel a little bit better. Sticking to a budget or having a budget, it feels restrictive, and it feels it doesn't feel very intentional in a lot of ways. Usually, sometimes the budget is retroactive. What we want to do when we create a spending plan is we want to be proactive and intentional. And I'm going to use those kind of words a little bit today because I think those words really matter, and the way that we think about retirement really matters. Now, that's one of the big challenges with retirement. When I help folks, a lot of times they have 20, 30, 40 plus years of diligently saving, investing, making sure that they are not living beyond their means. And over a long period of time, that can create some behavioral patterns that can be challenging to work through. And so framing your income plan or your budget as a spending plan in retirement, to me, this makes it a different track that we can go on. There's an idea that I want to share with you, and I share this with my clients in a little bit more depth. But there's an idea that I want to share with you that I call the terminal dollar. Now hang with me. This is a little bit conceptual, but hang with me. The idea of the terminal dollar is that every single person at some point in their life will earn the last dollar that they will ever personally spend. Now let me say that one more time. There's a point in every person's life where they will earn the last dollar that they will personally spend. Now, some folks, they earn that dollar really young. You know, think of your Elon Musks or your Mark Zuckerbergs, pick your billionaire. They earned that dollar a long time ago. And then there's other folks like me who I will earn my terminal dollar moments before I die because I have a beautiful wife and 3 lovely children. And my youngest little girl, she just bats her eyes at me and, you know, it's gone. But I'm just kidding. But, you know, the concept is at a certain point, you're not going to spend it anymore. And so we got to think about what can we do with the rest of those dollars. Now, the truth is, there's really only a few things that we can do with money. We can spend it, we can invest it, or we can give it away. Now, in some cases, giving it away is giving it away to our friends in Washington, and we're going to talk about how we handle that situation here in just a moment. But the key to building a great spending plan is to give every dollar a job. So once you figure out the dollars that you're going to need to spend, we need to give the rest of them a job. Now, some folks, they want to give money to their kids or give money to church or charity. That's great. Let's be intentional and proactive about doing that. One, if you want to gift money to your kids or grandkids or nieces and nephews someday, what if we were thoughtful about the way that we did that? What if we didn't just leave them a lump sum of cash when you pass? What if you could help them to be able to use that money wisely or spend that money wisely or invest that money wisely? What if you could help them what if you could transition not only your assets but also your value system? What's important to you? Why it's important that they save money? Why it's important that they're intentional about it? This all goes into a spending plan. Now, the other reason that we start with a spending plan is when you retire, retirement is all about income, really. The goal of retirement is to get to where your income that's coming in covers your expenses, and that can happen at various ages. Okay, there's not a set retirement age for everybody, but if you don't have a plan and we don't have enough income, well, you can't retire. So that's why we've got to focus on that first, and that's why we get that one done first. Now, there are a handful of different components that go into creating that income. These are things like Social Security, if you have guaranteed income like pensions, if you have rental properties that you're going to be getting income from. We have to look at all of those components, and every person's situation is different. And we have to understand, okay, what income are you going to get from what sources, and how do we minimize the taxes on that? This may surprise you, and we'll talk about this in a moment, but a lot of those sources are taxable, and there may be some hidden taxes or some phantom taxes in there. And so that's something we want to talk about. But the first step in preparing to have a great retirement is figuring out what your spending plan is going to be. Where's the money going to go, and where are you going to get the money? How are you going to create that income? And so, you know, you can really just create a list of where your income is going to be, create a list of what your expenses are. If your income's greater than your expenses, well, maybe you can retire. But what a lot of folks find is it's not quite that simple. And so we'll put the contact info up on the screen. If you have questions about this or you want help creating your spending plan, or maybe you're at the point where you have an income plan, but you want to make sure that your money goes to the people, places, and organizations that you care about when you pass, and you don't really have a great plan to do that, we can have a conversation and create an intentional legacy plan or gifting plan. Now, we've got a lot to cover today. I'm giving you a lot, and I'm giving it to you quick, but we're going to move on to the second piece. The second piece of the 4 pieces to create a great retirement blueprint is your plan to address inflation. Now, a lot of folks will talk about different risk in retirement, okay? And that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different folks. But the main risk that I want to talk about today is inflation. And I think this is getting a little bit of press right now, but I think it needs to get a little bit more attention. And most folks are feeling inflation right now more than maybe they have a little bit in the past. But really all inflation is just the destruction of our purchasing power over time. Don't you love that? Isn't that exciting? Now, how do we combat inflation? How do we fight inflation? If your dollar today is not going to spend the same way in 20 years, how do we grow that dollar to be able to cover our expenses? Well, to do that, we have to invest. Now, on this show, I'm not giving any specific tax, legal, or investment advice, but what I am telling you is that we've got to put those dollars to work. And I'm going to share with you, this is maybe the most powerful piece of what I'm going to share with you today. I'm going to share with you what I call the investment decision filter. Now, this is something that you can use anytime throughout really the rest of your life to evaluate any investment, okay? There are 4 components to any investment. Now, the way that I do this is we just write these on a piece of paper, and when we're evaluating an investment for one of our clients, we'll just put a check mark next to each one. The 4 components of any investment are taxes, fees, risk, and performance. I'll say that one more time. Taxes, fees, risk, and performance. Let me give you an example of one. This will be an easy one. Let's talk about CDs. This is an investment that most people are aware of. So CDs, they're not terribly tax advantaged, but they could be worse. So taxes, we'd maybe have a check mark there. Fees tend to be pretty low on CDs, so that can be a positive thing. Risk, that's something where CDs don't really carry much market risk. They technically do have some default risk if the bank goes under, which happens, not often. That's typically covered by the FDIC. And then performance. So with a CD, we're getting a couple of these. We're getting some safety is really what we're getting. We're not taking a bunch of risk, and typically they don't perform very well. Now, what about something like a stock? Well, stocks can be tax efficient, and they don't necessarily always have fees. Are we taking some market volatility? Yeah, we will take some market volatility when we have stocks. But what about performance? Well, historically, stocks have outperformed CDs and bonds and other investments, and so that's a category where those are a little bit higher. So we want to think about any time that we're evaluating an investment, this is a great criteria to use to figure out whether this is a place that you want to put money in order to help grow it. Now, there's going to be no investment that's perfect on each one. And so this is just a great decision-making framework that I use with my clients to help them think through where we're going to allocate money. Now, as part of this, when we were creating a plan to fight inflation, one of the beyond the investment decision filter, what we want to think about is what are we going to have in the portfolio, and what does it cost to own it? And so these are a few key things. When I am reviewing retirement plans or portfolios, I review them for dozens and dozens and dozens of people all across the country every single year. I've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of portfolios. And there's a couple things that I tend to find routinely that are interesting to me, and I'm going to share a couple of those with you. The first one is a lot of times folks don't actually know what it is that they own. And so when you're building a portfolio for retirement, I want to encourage you to figure out what do you actually own, number one. Number two, I want to encourage you to figure out what does it cost to actually own those things. You may be surprised, there are oftentimes layers of hidden fees in investments. Now, why might that be the case? Well, that's a story for another time. But we have tools that we can show you exactly what it costs to own whatever you own in your portfolio. The other thing that you want to think about in your portfolio is, what do you own? How much does it cost to own it? And does it make sense to own it? Is it going to do what you need it to do? Is it going to be able to keep up with inflation? Are you taking too much risk in retirement? The early few years can be really risky in retirement if we don't have enough income to be able to cover expenses. We want to understand how that portfolio works. And so these are a couple key things that you want to think about when you're building a portfolio or evaluating your portfolio in retirement. And so there's a couple other things we can talk about there, but we'll put the phone number up on the screen, and then that's my personal email as well. We create a report called a retirement risk analysis. And this is great whether you're getting ready to retire, you have retired, whether you've been working with an advisor for a year, 5 years, 25 years. It's a great opportunity to get an unbiased third-party opinion. We do a comprehensive analysis, and we tell you what you own, how it works, and what kind of internal expenses you have. And we can even look relatively well at, how is it going to perform, based on some reasonable assumptions. We can actually stress test your portfolio and work through some worst case scenarios. And we find that is a really helpful tool in order to walk through the first stages of retirement. Now, that's the second piece of the blueprint. Now, the third piece of the blueprint, we do this at this point very intentionally, okay? Remember, the first piece of the blueprint is your spending plan, or how are you going to create income in retirement. The second piece is your portfolio, or how much risk are you taking in retirement. And the reason we start with income is, well, if you don't have enough income, you can't retire, okay? I hope it's okay that I'm really candid with you. And if you can't retire, we don't need to spend too much time worrying about the portfolio. Now, once we get to the portfolio, we want to make sure that you don't run out of money in retirement and you're not taking too much risk. And once we get through that, then we can begin to look at taxes in retirement. Now, the reason we don't start with taxes is because if you don't have enough income to be able to retire, and you don't have a portfolio that we're worried about running out, well, taxes aren't going to be a problem, okay? And so we do this in this order very intentionally. Now, taxes, let's take a deep breath before we talk about this. This is one subject that can get everyone a little bit riled up, and is something that I'm frankly very passionate about. Now, I don't want you to go to sleep here, okay? Because what we're going to talk about, I believe, if you approach this the right way, can save you hundreds of thousands of dollars in retirement, okay? In some cases, millions of dollars in retirement. And what I find is a lot of folks don't really realize how taxes work, and they're not getting a lot of help from their professionals. Tell me if this sounds familiar, okay? What some of my clients that work with big household name firms tell me is that when they go to their advisor and they say, hey, I'm getting ready to retire, maybe this is an advisor that they've worked with for a number of years. They go to their advisor and they say, hey, we're getting ready to retire. We want to talk about taxes in retirement. How is that going to work for us? Typically, and it's funny, there's like a certain way that they always say this. Typically they say, hey, we're not a CPA, we don't do taxes. You got to go ask your tax preparer about that. And so, you go across the street and you go talk to your tax preparer and you say, hey, we're getting ready to retire, if you can get a hold of your tax preparer. We're getting ready to retire, and we want to make sure we understand how taxes are going to work in retirement. We don't want to lose all our money to Washington. And they say, great. Unfortunately, we can't help with that. That's financial planning. We don't do financial planning. Go talk to your financial advisor about that, and then you get stuck in the middle. And if that sounds familiar, that's because that's what a lot of people experience. Well, the problem is that's not a great way to make decisions. And so what we do a little bit differently is we lead that conversation with our clients. And we educate folks about how taxes work in retirement and how to not get killed on taxes in retirement. And so there's a couple of key areas that really are important when we talk about that. The first one is we want to understand, is your Social Security going to be taxable in retirement? Now, don't shoot the messenger with this, but a lot of folks don't realize that depending on what types of income they have in retirement, their Social Security can be taxable. It can be included in their taxable income. So we want to figure that out. The next thing we want to figure out is, what do you really owe? Most folks, when they're getting ready to retire, the bulk of their retirement savings are in traditional IRAs, 401ks, 403bs. And what's happened there is there's been a transaction. You have deferred taxes in order to contribute to those accounts, and you've also deferred the tax calculation. There's two parts, okay? Number one, you've deferred the taxes to a later date. But two, in doing so, you've deferred the tax calculation. Now, I'm not saying that it's your fault. This is just the game that we've been given to play. But what a lot of folks don't realize is the promise of being in a lower tax bracket in retirement hasn't borne out for a lot of people. And so what we find is when we get into retirement, spending is not actually as low as they think. And oh, by the way, taxes are expected to go up for a lot of folks' retirement. And if we're not careful, this can be a big problem. I will tell you, and I firmly believe this, if you do not plan and you do not prepare, taxes can be the largest expense in your retirement. Now, I don't like to be necessarily the messenger on this, but if there's something that we can do about it, if we can be proactive and we can pay less taxes, and I don't tell you about it, I think that's on me. Now, if you decide to not worry about it, then I think that's up to you to make that decision. But we have these tax-deferred accounts, IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, and what happens is in retirement, when you take the money out, that's counted as ordinary income, and it's taxed at your highest marginal bracket. Now, let me ask this question. Are you familiar with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017? We have an exciting tax system right now. I guess it's only exciting for tax nerds like me. But the tax system that we're under right now is going to sunset in 2026. It's going to go back to what it was in 2017. For most Americans, now this is unless Congress gets excited, okay? This is unless our friends in Washington get more excited, and I think we just hit $35 trillion as our debt, maybe $36 trillion. I hadn't looked today. Unless they get excited, that's going to be a tax increase for most Americans, okay? And so what we got to talk about, I'm not trying to scare you, I'm trying to educate you and go, hey, this is important, and we have an opportunity to pay some of these taxes at lower rates potentially. Now, this can be a huge opportunity for a lot of folks. But let me ask you, do you feel confident about your tax plan going into these tax changes? Do you feel confident that you have a strategy, that you know exactly how you're going to pay as little tax as legally possible? Now, I'm not going to tell you not to pay your fair share. I believe everyone has to pay their fair share. But your fair share is variable based on the circumstances in your life, how charitable you are, and how proactive you are about your planning, okay? And so what I want to encourage folks, if we're talking about this tax planning and none of the professionals in your life have talked to you about this type of thing, we're going to put the contact information on the screen again here in just a moment. If folks have not been talking to you about this, if you don't feel that you really have a good grasp of how you're going to avoid getting killed on taxes in retirement, give us a call, shoot me an email, happy to talk you through it. We'll create a tax reduction plan for you. And what that will be is we'll walk through the different pieces of your particular financial plan. We'll look at how they're taxed, and we'll create a plan to minimize your lifetime taxes. And so most folks, when they're doing tax planning, they're looking at the current year. And I call that micro planning. It's important. We want to look at the current year, and this is what most tax preparers do. We want to see what happened in the last year, and how do we pay as little tax as possible. Great. That's, to me, is kind of like looking through the rear view mirror when you're driving. Now, that's important. I want to encourage you, look in the rear view mirror when you're driving. But what we really want to do is do macro planning. We want to plan, how do we get your taxes as low as possible for your entire lifetime? How do we get your effective tax rate as low as possible over your lifetime? And to me, that's like looking through the windshield. Okay, we need to spend quite a bit more time looking through the windshield when we're driving. That way we don't crash. And so if you would like some help with that, we'd be happy to talk to you and share some of those ideas. Now, we have just a few moments left. We're going to talk about the fourth piece, the fourth ingredient in our blueprint here in order to have a great retirement. Now, I will tell you, often we start with this. But Ian, you kept this for the last piece. I know I did. But when we're really talking and we're really reverse engineering a retirement plan, the fourth piece that we want to talk about is estate planning. Now, in practice, when we are working with our clients, this tends to be one of the first things that we think about. Now, I want you to ask why that is. Well, if we have a view for what the end looks like and what you want to happen, then we can build the plan backwards and make sure we take the right steps along the way in order to get there. Now, this could be very, very different depending on your goals, and depending on your goals, this really does drive some different planning decisions. I have some clients who, they have saved really well for their retirement. In some cases, they've maybe oversaved, and through doing that for 40, 50 years, in some cases, they don't spend very much. And so they're gonna end up, leaving the bulk of their assets is going to be to their family or their other loved ones, or folks that they want to leave that to. And if they're comfortable with that, and if they want that to be the case, let's plan for that proactively. How do we make sure that we don't get killed in taxes when that happens? Part of that sunset provision of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that we talked about is a significant reduction in the estate tax limit. Now, folks haven't been talking about this for a long time because that limit's really high. Historically, that limit has been around $1 million over the last 25, 30 years. And so this is going to come into view, I think, for a lot more folks. So number one, how do we make sure that when you are transitioning it to your family or to your other beneficiaries, whether it's grandchildren, nieces and nephews, whomever you'd like to gift it to, how do you do it in the most tax efficient way? And there's some gotchas in the tax code, and so we want to think through that. Or I have other clients who maybe they don't want to give it to charitable organizations, or they don't have anyone they want to give it to. We want to make the last check bounce. Now we can, and I joke a little bit when I say that, we can get pretty close to that, I will tell you. But we just have to know exactly when you're going to die and exactly how much you spend. We got to do the whole process in order to figure that out. But if that's the case, we're going to make different decisions relative to estate planning than if we want to leave, wealth for multiple generations. And there are different tools and different techniques that we're going to explore in those situations, okay? And so when we're doing comprehensive planning with an individual or with a family, we want to have an idea of what is the ideal end state. What do we want to happen? If everything goes the way that you'd like, what do you want to happen? Now, can I tell you what I find most of the time? There's two things that I find. A lot of times folks don't know exactly what they want to happen, and that's okay. And part of our process is we're going to talk through that with them and give them some ideas of what they, maybe don't want to happen. I find that asking the question of what do you not want to happen tends to provide a little bit more clarity than just saying, hey, what do you want to happen? The second thing that I find very often is when we start to talk about estate planning, folks go, oh, we've done estate planning. And I say, great, let's talk about it. What do you want to have happen? And they'll tell us what they want to have happen. And then we'll say, great, let's review the documents and let's just make sure, let's just double check that what you want to happen is actually going to happen. Now, let me ask you this. How often do you think what folks want to happen and what is going to happen in their current estate plan, how often do you think those things really line up? It's a lot less often than you would think. And there's a couple reasons for that. And primarily that is just that laws change and the things that you care about and what you want to happen change. And so, we want to encourage you to look at estate planning not as a one-time activity, okay? We want to encourage you to look at it as an ongoing process. Laws change, your desires change, the tools that we can use change. And so, we want to encourage you, have your estate plan reviewed at least every 5 years, if not every couple of years. With our clients, we're always updating it, we're always reviewing it. That's one of the benefits of working with Todd, who is a certified elder law attorney. We do this stuff in and out all day long. And this is really important, okay? Now, there's a couple components to a good estate plan, and I've just got a couple moments left here with you this afternoon, but I'm gonna share these with you, okay? So a great estate plan is going to do a couple things. Number one, it's going to avoid probate. Now, in Arkansas, probate is very expensive. There is never a good reason to go through probate, okay? And so there's a handful of different ways to avoid probate, but I can tell you confidently you do not want to go through probate unless you'd like your heirs or your beneficiaries to spend a lot of money and a lot of time in court. And if that's the case, we can tell you how to do that. Okay? I'm kidding. We have to have a little bit of fun when we talk about these things. Another thing that you want to do is you want to gift intentionally. you don't want to be surprised about what happens, okay? The third thing that you want to happen with a great estate plan is you want to stay out of court. Now that includes both probate and guardianship. And so we need to have very comprehensive powers of attorney so that that doesn't happen. And then the fourth piece, this is part of a great estate plan, is how are you going to pay for long-term care if that happens? Now, it's something that I want you to think about. We don't have all the answers for it today, but that is something that needs to be part of any great estate plan. Well, we talked about a lot today. I know I've left you with a lot. I don't expect you to memorize it, but hopefully you've got some questions, you've got some ideas about how to create a great retirement. We're going to put the ways to contact us up back on the screen, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you, everybody. Give us a call if you have questions about your estate planning or retirement plan. We'd love to help, and God bless.